and weary and agitated young guy washes ashore on a beach, briefly glances up to see two little children playing in the sand, and then passes out. He is found by an armed guard, who then has him transported to a sizable coastal palace, where the owner, a senior Japanese man, is informed of the visitor's presence. The only items discovered on him were a brass top and a pistol. The elderly man lets the outsider in. He is brought in and given food, which he finds difficult to consume, as the elderly man takes up the brass top and declares, "You make me think of a man I met in a vaguely recalled dream. He held some unconventional beliefs." As the scene changes, the stranger glances up in awareness. In a hauntingly similar dining room, Dom Cobb and his associate Arthur explain their services to potential client Sato, emphasizing protection against burglars who specialize in obtaining sensitive information from a target while they are dreaming. In order to preserve whatever secrets Sato may be concealing, Cobb reveals that while one is asleep, one's mind is exposed to attack. However, he can educate Sato's mind to unconsciously defend against extractors. He demonstrates his skill as the best extractor there is, and his knowledge of all the involved tactics to support his claim. Sato is dubious and gets up to leave the room, saying Cobb he'll think about it. Then he goes out to the main hall to join a small gathering. As the room starts to tremble, Arthur glances across at Cobb and says he knows. Arthur points to a woman close and asks Cobb what she's doing. As they move to an outdoor balcony where other partygoers congregate, Cobb promises to take care of it and to move forward with the job. He glanced over at a safe the moment Cobb used the phrase. Thus he is aware of where Sato's secrets are kept. The woman asks Cobb if he misses her as he approaches her. He replies that he does, but he is no longer able to trust her. Cobb fastens a rope to the leg of a chair and throws the other end out the window as they withdraw into a secluded space. Mal asks him if the kids miss her, and he motions for her to have a seat. "I can't imagine," Cobb says after pausing briefly. When Mal gets up from her seat, he rappels out the window to a ledge below, almost falling. As the lights in the room come on, he breaks into the room below and enters the safe, taking out a manila folder and replacing it. Mal is standing next to Sato and pointing a gun at him as he turns, and a guard is restraining Arthur. Cobb pushes his revolver across the table and asks Sato if she told him that you are come to steal from me, or that we are truly dozing off. Sato asks in response. The three of them are connected to a passive device, which administers the tranquilizer Somnacin to keep them all slept down and enable dream sharing. Nash, Lucas Haas, another of Cobb's associates, keeps an eye on them. Before entering another room to check on Arthur and Cobb, who were both dozing off in chairs, he examines Sato, who was sleeping on a bed. Cobb's chair is perched over a water-filled tub. As a rioting group moves along the street, explosions and yells outside get closer. Mal threatens Arthur with a gun inside the dream, but Cobb tells her it's pointless and passes the manila folder to Sato, because shooting him will simply wake him up. Mal nods in agreement while shooting Arthur in the knee, causing him to cry out, and claims that pain is only imagined and regarded as genuine. Cobb dives over the table, grabs his weapon, and shoots Arthur once in the head. The guards for Sato then open fire as he flees the room. Before checking on the still sleeping Sato, Arthur wakes up and tells Nash that things are unraveling, but that Cobb still has time to complete the task. Mal glances up from the couch and asks, "What's she doing here?" As she steps on some shattered glass, Mal grows protective and picks up a shard of glass. While Ariadne attempts to explain that she only wants to understand, Mal rushes forward, yelling at Cobb that he broke his commitment. As Cobb shows up and pulls Ariadne back to the elevator. As Ariadne and Cobb leave the dream, Cobb says that Mal's passing and the suspicion that he was responsible for her death prevent him from returning home. Ariadne doesn't question him if he did or not, and he praises her for that, but she does caution him that if he believes he can imprison Mal in that way, he is incorrect. He must let go of his sorrow over her passing. Cobb needs a friend who can relate to what he's going through, so Ariadne persuades him to let her accompany the team into the dreams. Robert will be traveling with Maurice Fisher's body to the United States in a few days. Sato and Arthur arrive at that same moment to make the announcement. As soon as they are seated, the squad joins Robert in the first-class cabin. As a conversation starter, Cobb gives back Robert's passport, which Arthur had stolen, and then poisons his water, before proposing a toast in memory of his father. Miranda Nolan, the paid-off flight attendant, helps set up and activate the passive device as Robert falls asleep shortly after. Collectively, the group enters Yusuf Stream first. Members of the squad get picked up in New York City as it is pouring heavily. As part of the kidnapping scheme, Arthur and Sato commandeer a taxi, pick up Robert, Eames, and then Yusuf. Cobb and Ariadne continue in a different car until a train abruptly plows down the middle of the road, colliding with their vehicle and momentarily halting them. Then, when gunfire opens up on the taxi, the squad is forced to make quick evasive maneuvers and hide out in a warehouse, where they find Sato wounded in the chest. Sato is placed on a table while Robert is led into another room. Cobb intervenes and says that because of the sedatives they've taken, they won't wake up if they pass away, preventing Eames from shooting him to put an end to his suffering and waking him up. They will instead be banished to limbo, a collective dream world of the raw subconscious, where time is essentially non-existent. This infuriates the crew, who question why they took such a risk and wonder what to do about the military forces closing in on their location. The projections that are attacking them are actually a component of Robert's subconscious resistance against extraction. They'll learn. The team believes they must do the work as soon as possible because Sato's condition is deteriorating, and they cannot wait any longer. Owing to the approaching defense projections, Cobb admits to Ariadne that he can't block Mal from entering his thoughts. When she questions him about his control over his own subconscious, they had been experimenting with dream states to discover how deep they could delve into their subconscious, he explains to her. Together, they ended up in a limbo situation where they were unable to depart due to the time left on their passive clocks. They rebuilt their lives over the course of many years. After a while, they got used to thinking of limbo as their reality. To bring them back to reality after over 50 years, Cobb and Mal murdered themselves on railway tracks. Mal, who had returned to the real world, said that she was still dreaming and that the only way to wake up was by dying. However, she would not leave Cobb behind, since she loved him too much. Cobb discovered the hotel room to be in disarray with the window open on their wedding anniversary. Mal, who was sitting outside on a different ledge, told Cobb that she had written a letter to their lawyer, stating her fear for her life, effectively implicating him in the event of her demise and leaving him with little choice but to follow her. Mal rejects Cobb's attempts to talk her out of it and jumps to her death, despite his refusal to do so. Cobb's argument for his innocence is defeated by the mounting evidence against him, especially because she was determined to be legally sane by 3 psychiatrists. Cobb is forced to leave the country, leaving his children with their grandmother. As Arthur fights against Robert's projections, the van briefly loses control and tumbles down an incline. The van's effect is translated into Arthur's dream, as the environment around him spins as gravity reverses and then right itself. Yusuf continues to drive, but soon finds himself trapped with one car full of projections on an elevated bridge. Before driving backwards off the bridge, Yusuf blasts music over Arthur's headphones to alert him to the impending kick. The power of the collision launches Arthur in his dream into the air, and as the van falls in midair, there is a lack of gravity. The third level of the dream is likewise affected by the influence. As an avalanche descends on them, Sato and Robert are forced to cut their lines as they stare up the mountainside. Cobb understands they missed the first kick, but when the van crashes into the water off the bridge, they still have time for the second one. 10 seconds remain until collision as the van drives off the bridge. Dream 2. The kick must be timed in 3 minutes. Arthur tries to figure out how to achieve this without using gravity. 60 minutes remain in Dream 3. With little time remaining, Cobb wants to know if there is another entrance to the fort, and Ariadne finally gives in and informs him that Robert and Sato can enter through a covert underground passage. Sato's condition worsens as Cobb sends them there. Cobb and Ariadne keep a sniper's view as they wait for them to reach the main room where the safe sits. Sato succumbs to his wounds and is allowed to lie down while Robert moves on, coughing up blood. However, another individual also enters Cobb's field of vision as Robert does. Before Cobb realizes his error and shoots her, Mal descends from the ceiling and knocks Robert to the ground. Cobb and Ariadne rush to the scene as Eames is told to go to the room. Cobb declares the mission a failure after discovering Robert dead, because the only place Robert could have gone is limbo. However, Ariadne persuades him that if they enter limbo, they would have enough time to track down Robert and return him home. While Cobb and Ariadne are unconscious, Eames agrees to use a defibrillator to help Robert's heart start beating again. Mal had hidden a fact during their time in limbo: her totem was kept inside her safe, lying on its side and immobile, telling her that her dream, her limbo, was real. Mal didn't want to believe this truth anymore. Cobb broke into her safe and spun the top to try to convince her that this reality wasn't real, in an effort to save her sanity. He was unaware that after they actually awoke, she would still have that belief. Because he used Inception on Mal first and her subsequent death has plagued him ever since, He knew this was how it would happen. If Mal finds out where Robert is and she says he's on the porch, he assures her he'll stay with her in Limbo. When Ariadne sees him there, she gives him an impromptu kick by pushing him away. The coordinated kicks pull on Ariadne while she is in midair, and she requests Cobb to join her. Cobb declares that he won't stay in Limbo with Mal, though Sato has already passed away and entered Limbo at this point. Cobb pledges to find him but must first. Ariadne leaps from the skyscraper and returns to Dream 1 after riding the kicks. Robert awakens inside the van and uses Browning to get out of the waterlogged vehicle. Yusuf shares an oxygen tank with Arthur, Ariadne, and Cobb before they all depart the van, leaving Cobb behind. As soon as Robert and Browning reach land, Robert says that his father genuinely did want him to be his own man, and that he plans to achieve just that by liquidating his father's business. Eames discards the Browning mask after concluding that the task was successful. Cobb washes up on the coast in Limbo, where the armed guard discovers him. The elderly Japanese guy, who has been taken to the beach palace, recognizes his brass top. As soon as Cobb remembers why he was there, he phones Sato and asks him to join him in honoring their agreement. Sato, who is aging, reaches for Cobb's weapon. On the plane, Cobb awakens to the startling sight of Arthur and Ariadne grinning at him. Sato, who is now awake, remembers and picks up his phone to ring. He looks at Sato. When the plane lands in Los Angeles, Cobb moves through customs with trepidation. Security checks his passport but lets him through, wishing him welcome back. Robert pauses briefly as though remembering a vague dream as Cobb passes by the rest of the team. The movie ends here. Thank you for watching. Please give us a like and subscribe to get more of our recaps.